Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to tell you everything I did to learn how to muscle up and also how I got them looking like this in 10 months. The muscle up had always felt like this completely elusive skill for me. I would watch girls do them and think, oh my god, they look incredible, so strong, I'm never going to be able to do that. And then I realised I'd never actually tried. I never tried to learn it. So last summer in June, I decided enough was enough and I was going to tackle the muscle up once and for all. And here we are, 10 months later, I can do multiple reps of a swing muscle up and I'm working on getting a more consistent strict muscle up. And I want to talk you through my journey and how I did it, what worked for me, what not to waste your time on, and hopefully you can get yourselves there too. So I want to jump straight in with the prerequisites I had before I started the muscle up. And we'll talk about my personal ones, and then we'll also touch a little bit on what I think you should have before you start seriously trying to tackle the muscle up. So personally for me, I could already do sets of pull-ups and chin-ups, but I could do about 10 pull-ups, pretty strong. But as I moved into the second set and the third set, I would definitely notice that my reps started to kind of drop off. So I could do like 10 reps for set 1, 8 reps for set 2, and then I might be struggling for 6, 7 on like the third, fourth set. I was also starting to kind of dabble in some weighted pull-up work. It's kind of at the point where I was thinking, well, all I'm doing is going into the gym and repping these pull-ups. I'm not doing anything really to kind of challenge the strength aspect. So I decided to buy a weight belt and start introducing some weighted work into my training. And I could also do sets of about 8 to 10 dips on parallel bars. So that was kind of where I was at. I wouldn't say I was actively training all of those things apart from the pull-ups. I definitely wasn't training dips, but I could do them. And so I felt like I had a pretty strong start point to train for the muscle up. Speaking about you guys and what you should have before you start learning your muscle up, I would probably say you need to be around the same point I was. Maybe people do say you have to be able to do 10 pull-ups, and I feel like that's a great goal to have, but I would definitely say you need to have consistent reps. So you need to be doing at least 3 sets, and I would say at least 6, 7, maybe even 8 reps. And that needs to be pretty comfortable for you. You should definitely be able to dip. You shouldn't be learning that. You should have a pretty strong dip, and I'd also say your pull strength needs to be good so that you could be starting to work on weighted pulls even at like just with 2.5 kg for some lower numbers, but you need to have that strength. And the reason I say that is because otherwise you are delaying your journey. If you're doing banded muscle ups but you don't have a strong pull-ups and you don't have strong dips, in my eyes you are, I don't want to say wasting your time because that's a little bit strong, but ultimately to achieve the muscle up you need a high explosive pull and you need to be able to dip. And so although you may want to run ahead and start actually training the skill, you're not going to get the skill if you don't have those fundamentals anyway. And it may feel like a slower road to the muscle up. It may feel like, oh, you're not at the fun stuff yet, but spending a little bit longer getting those foundations strong will make your journey here way quicker. So that was my current situation I was in when I decided I wanted to learn muscle up in June 2023 last year. My very first ever muscle up session I did with one of my friends over at the park, and I had no routine, no structure. I didn't really understand the movement at all. I was just like, let's do this. So I remember that session I did some banded muscle ups for the first time. We'll talk about that in a minute. I did some negatives and I also did some other little things like jumping muscle ups. And the number one thing I took away from that session was that I was still not strong enough. I thought I had a really good start point. I wasn't strong enough. And also I had no understanding of the technique. And I feel like the technique is what takes so much time. You can have really strong, powerful, explosive people with no understanding of the technique. So those were my two main takeaways from that session. So let me dive into that session a little bit. Here you can see my first attempts at banded muscle ups, and I don't know whether this was just because I come from a gymnastics background, but I couldn't understand that, well, my body was just basically trying to take the path of least resistance, and that for me was to not actually pull with the arms and try and get the elbows up. It was to pull with the arms, straighten the arms, try and get the hips to the bar and pull myself over, almost like kind of like a kip. And that took me a really long time. I say long time, but it took me longer to understand than I would realise, because everyone talks about like this pushing the button, but no one tells you where the button is and when to pull or how to pull. So yeah, at that point I was like, okay, I have no idea how to do this. And also you can see in that video I had no strength at the top. Like as soon as I got the chest over the bar, I was like arching to kind of get myself up there. And also in that session, like I mentioned, I did those negatives. I was so humbled by an exercise. I could not go from here to here without one, excruciating pain. Like it hurt my arm so badly and I couldn't catch it to like control it down. I literally was like dropped straight to the floor. And so after that session, I remember writing myself some things I definitely needed to focus on in training moving forwards. So I kind of split my training across 2 days at that point, and I can't remember exactly which days they were on, but I focused the training on pull-ups, weighted pull-ups, high pull-ups, straight bar dips, negatives, and banded muscle ups. Again, that was split across 2 sessions because I couldn't do all of that in one day because my arms just genuinely could not handle it. But it split it across 2 days, and I used to do one session kind of at the start of the week and one towards the end. So I kind of gave myself like at least minimum 3 days recovery between sessions because it was hard. It was brutal. My lats were so sore for a really, really long time. At this point, I kind of surprised myself because I still I wasn't being very strict on the structure, but I did just make sure I focused on progressive overload when I could. So I was really pushing the weight on my weighted pulls. I think I got up to maybe like 17.5 for 3 reps. My high pulls were coming along really well, but rather than, I was kind of using my legs to pull, so I was using kind of like my core strength for my legs to kind of get the height to pull, but even so I could kind of get above, like below boob height really. And I remember after about 5-6 weeks of kind of doing those skills and getting a little bit more familiar with the movements, and especially more familiar with the actual banded rep, which I will talk a little bit more about banded reps maybe after this. I was like, do you know what, I'm just going to try it without, what's the worst that's going to happen, you know, just be brave. And I remember, I think this was maybe like 6-7 weeks into the like concentrated training block, and I got over the bar and I was in absolute disbelief. Like I kind of felt like it could happen because I remember I was training that day and I was like, this feels good, I think I should go for it. And I felt so strong and gave it a go and ended up getting over the bar. So I managed to get over the bar for my first muscle up in about 2 months, let's say 2 months. And I guess the takeaway for you guys from that is I wasn't even doing any transition work at this point. I'd only focused on strength. So it just goes to show you, if you focus on your strength, you focus on your explosiveness, the easier this skill is going to be, because then all you've got to do is learn the technique. The technique side was what I was definitely struggling with alongside the strength. I mean, the first time you get over the bar, it had like a little bit of kip with the legs. I was still kind of doing this like little nosedive to the top. But also on the bars in my gym, because I didn't have a straight bar that I can practice on, I was using the ones that go up above the squat rack, so it kind of has a hole for your chest in the middle. So I had no idea really whether it would transfer onto a straight bar, because at the moment my chest was going straight through the gap, it wasn't having to go past anything. And I didn't try a straight bar muscle up until another maybe like 4 weeks after I got the first rep. So I'll attach here the clips of my first straight bar training session. Now you can see I went back to slightly more kipping muscle up. Ultimately, looking back on, I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed that I put that up, but it was a pivotal part kind of my learning journey, and it helped me realise I was definitely a lot more capable to learning this skill than I thought I was. You could definitely see like I had the height there. I was just obviously using the legs quite a lot. So after that training session, I kind of sat down, I analysed the videos, and I was like, okay, we need to not let the legs come up as high, and we need to kind of sort out the point that we swing at. So I started using kind of like a visual guide on the floor to not let my legs come too far forward, and where I would want the toes to swing to before I started kind of initiating the pullback. And I feel like those type of visual cues are really, really helpful to have when you're learning to muscle up. I spent a good kind of another month, maybe even 2 months, training for the muscle up on my own, and I just felt like I wasn't really progressing. I could do about a single rep, and the pull section was getting pretty good. I knew that if I could get to the pull and catch, most of the time I was going to be safe, but where I felt like I was really weak was in this dip, because I could kind of get to this point, but I couldn't sometimes like have the strength to get those wrists a little bit over to then push to the top. And I felt like the training that I was doing wasn't really helping me understand how to do that. And yeah, I just kind of felt like I wasn't getting stronger. I wasn't able to do more than one rep, and it was really, really inconsistent. So in December, I decided to get a coach and start following a program. My main goals going into the program were to clean up my muscle up, to start learning how to ring muscle up, which is so funny because most people learn to ring muscle up before they learn to bar muscle up, and also to be able to start linking reps together. And I also only wanted to train for it twice a week, because in December, I was starting to get quite a lot of like elbow pain, and I did end up going to get checked out, and they diagnosed me with tendonitis purely from all of the training. So maybe I think what happened was where I wasn't following a kind of program, I was getting a little bit carried away. I was training too much, and I ended up getting myself a little bit injured. So I did have to have like a couple weeks off of training completely, because every time I put my hands on the bar, it was just killing. 2 months of my program was slightly hindered by that, and also from living in the UK, I don't have an indoor bar setup. My bar setup was outside. It's not fun to train muscle ups in the wind and the rain, so there was a period where I wasn't actually doing many muscle ups at all. I was doing, and what the program was focusing on doing across the whole of December and the start of January, was getting me strong. I had 2 sessions. My Monday session was very similar to what it was already, but it was banded reps, focusing on trying to link reps together. It was high pulls. It was transitions, which were a new exercise for me. It's the first time I ever did transition work in December, and it was, again, straight bar dips. The Friday session was more focused on the ring muscle ups. It was focused on weighted pull-ups, and it was just other little bits of push accessory work. I genuinely think the number one thing that completely transformed my muscle ups was the transition work. They have been so savage. I've done them the same for the last like 4 months since I started that program in December, and looking at them, you'd be like, why is she still doing the same exercise? But from where they started to where they are now, there's such a difference in technique. Over time, and what I focused on was really making sure I pushed myself technically. So over time, I've practiced on trying to catch lower, to try and dip the elbows lower, to try and initiate an actual pull from that lower position, and then a big powerful push. And even after just doing those for 4 weeks, I felt such a difference in my muscle ups. No longer was I kind of getting to this point and then struggling to push. I could get here, and then I had a really big powerful push at the top. So although it kind of looked a little bit sketchy and a little bit scatty, it looked a lot more powerful. And so not only was it kind of teaching me how to transition, it was also building my strength in full script. It was building my dip strength, and that had such big carryovers into the rest of the work. I also think it's really important to mention that I kind of never went down like the kipping bent leg muscle up route or the chicking muscle up route. I don't know whether, again, this was a gymnast thing, but I was incredibly strict with myself about how I was going to execute my reps. So I would push to the point, and rather than kind of get up at all costs, I would like push to the point I couldn't push anymore and then kind of come down, because in my head I really did not want to train myself into bad habits. It wasn't a case of I want to get this quickly so let me get up at all costs. It was let me do this in the best way possible, and I do actually think that committing to that again helped me shorten my progress time. Alongside the transitions, which I feel like was a really big powerful point, there was other things that kind of, when they clicked, it made such a big change. And so one was to remember to pull around the bar. I watched a video, I can't remember whose video it was, about explaining how to pull around the bar, and it honestly, it was literally like something clicked in my brain. So rather than thinking, okay, I'm just going to pull as hard as I can to my chest, I thought, okay, I'm going to pull round to my belly button. And after that point, I was literally flying. And I think after that clicked is when I started getting like 2 reps and having the confidence to go for 3 reps. It does mean that obviously you are going to allow the legs to ride slightly, but I think if you are really strict with yourself at the height level you allow the legs to come up to, and also just squeezing the hell out of your legs, you know, it will be a lot easier to resist the urge to kip or resist the urge to bend your legs if you're actively thinking about keeping them straight. And also that ability to pull around the bar will get easier the more you train your high pulls. So I feel like it's a very general kind of like full circle, because it goes back to the stronger you are, the easier and the better this skill will be for you. Because ultimately you're never going to have great technique the first time you try something. Technique is something that you have to learn and you have to practice and you have to do over and over and over again until it gets like cemented into your brain. But the one thing you can control and have a lot of control over consistently is the strength work. If you know you're strong enough, you know that you're going to have a lot more room to play around with the technique. I did that training program with some minor tweaks, but the core exercises like the high pulls, the banded reps, the transitions have all stayed the same for the last 4 months till the present day, and that has got me to this point. I haven't done anything crazy. I've not changed my exercises. What I did do is I stayed so consistent. I pushed myself, I didn't give up, and I've had plenty of weeks off where I didn't have the focused training, but then I kind of got back to it. I heavily focused on making sure every session was worth it, so I really did concentrate on all my reps. I made sure that when I was doing my reps, I got the most out of them. I never went through the stage of kind of doing like half rep straight bar dips. Like every time I did a straight bar dip, I took it straight to the bar and then I pushed back up. You know, I feel like I really tried to utilize every training session I had to get the absolute most out of it. So I didn't try to cut any corners. I was just like, okay, I'm committed to this process. I'm just going to keep doing it for as long as it takes me. And I honestly think if you can do that, you will make so much more progress in such a shorter amount of time than you realize. There will always be a new drill you will see and think, I want to try that. There will always be something that you want to try. But if you create strong foundations, you start then learning the kind of technical aspects to the muscle up, you start learning how to put them together, eventually you're gonna get to that stage where you can start doing it, and then you can start perfecting the technique. I do hope this video can give you a little bit of inspiration if you want to start your muscle up journey, can give you a little bit of clarity to what you actually need to do to see progress, and to help you realize that you don't need hundreds is a little dramatic, but you don't need loads of different muscle up drills. Focus on the essential things that you need, focus on doing them consistently, focus on making them progressively harder. And if I can do it, you can do it. I've gone from watching girls do muscle ups and wishing I could be like that to now doing it. And you could be watching this and thinking, I can't do that, and in 10 months to a year's time you could be in my position. And all it just takes is a little bit of commitment, a little bit of belief in yourself, and just embracing this learning journey. I hope you enjoyed the vid, guys, and I hope more than anything this inspires you to keep going or to start your muscle up journey. I'll see you soon.